Welcome to Tate Britain and a very special series. I'm Gus Casely-Hayford, cultural historian and unabashed art fanatic.
Joseph Herman is such an important figure.
And I'm going to take you on a journey into the scenes of some of our most loved landscape paintings.
We are right in Constable country.
But I'm not alone. I'm going to be joined by some of our nation's favourite personalities.
She's more interested in him because of his money.
How dare you assume that?
We're going to walk in the artist's footsteps, revealing their views.
Look at that.
Inspirations.
Now that, of course, is just utterly absurd.
And secrets. Jeez. So, sit back and enjoy the walk. Or better still, why not follow in our footsteps?
Oh, bugger it. Why was I born so short?
He's difficult, he's irascible, but he's also incredibly funny and an utter genius. William Hogarth. And he's someone who captured London unlike anyone before, or in my mind, after.
English painter, printmaker, and political satirist William Hogarth used his acid wit to expose the dark side of 18th century society. Here he is, recorded for posterity, with his, I'm sure, knowingly named pug, Trump. His works chronicle the Georgian era, a time of profound change, when London was emerging from the ashes of the Great Fire, and everyone was going mad for money, or with syphilis, or both. Today, Hogarth is often given the epitaph of father of modern satire. But for me, he's much more than that. He's an artist, a sensitive soul who pours his emotions and experiences into very powerful works of art.
And we are going to dip into his world with writer, broadcaster, and also fellow lover of London, Danny Baker.
He's a multi-award-winning broadcaster who's loved by his fans, but has famously fallen out with many of his bosses over the years. And to my mind, like Hogarth, is one of our unrecognised national treasures.
Aha!
Aha, Mr.
Look
Danny
at
Baker.
this.
Good to
Well,
see
you
you.
live, eh? How you
It's
doing?
my place, yeah.
Wow. Well, man alive. Now, the temptation is to lower your voice when you come in here, but
No,
that's not you don't...
break all the rules today.
Danny's a walking encyclopedia of popular culture, but when it comes to crossing the line into high art, he's not a fan.
If you could run away with a piece of art today, what would you be going for?
Oh, I've never seen a piece of art that I thought, you know, could replace my Bob Dylan posters.
But something like, say, like this, which...
Nope. No,
No?
there's someone waiting for cameras to be invented, that is. That's...
But there's one artist that I know is right up Danny's street.
Hogarth.
Ah, no,
'Cause
hold on.
For me, I think he's probably
It is, yes.
up there with the greatest British artist.
Oh, that's tremendous that you say that, because it's playing to the things I like.
This is Hogarth's most famous work, the brutal yet funny Gin Lane. He issued this print in 1751 when he was at the very height of his career, and Britain was experiencing its first ever reported binge drinking crisis.
I liked it.
What do you like about it?
The very first time I saw this, I thought, look at that. I know where that is. I like the noise of it. I like the grotesqueries, him gnawing on the bone here. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so extreme. There's
And sharing it with the
sharing
dog.
it with a dog. This iconic image of the baby falling on its head.
Yeah.
It struck me as funny. It's like today when you get these stand-up comedians and they say stuff which is so bleak that it is comic. He didn't do that lightly. I bet he would have halfway through this, friends would have come and said, "You're not going to have the baby." Yeah, I am. He must have done.
But some of it, I mean, this is kind of like medieval. There's a chap here with bellows on his head who's got a child on a spike.
Oh, do you know, I've never seen the kid on the spike.
And could you see, look, there's a woman who's obviously, it's probably the mother
seen the kid on
who's
the spike.
rushing out of the house.
I'm not there.
This is like the end of the world.
This is Hogarth's depiction of the gin craze, when this new spirit was cheaper than beer and safer to drink than water. London's poor were drowning in the stuff, and boozing was spilling over into violence, poverty, crime, disease, and even death.
This couple here, that she's actually selling, you know, her pots and pans. He's selling his tools. I mean, these are the very kind of things that are going to, if anything, help them to survive.
When I was growing up and around Petticoat Lane then, and Brick Lane, people still did that.
Yes.
They would be drunk at 10 in the morning selling valves out of their televisions and radios. They'd be spread out, and a shoe, and a burnt kettle. That dissolute life has always run through me, either recognising it, empathising with it, or being appalled by it. But it all started with that.
Yeah.
And probably why I never found an appreciation for so-called fine art is because it never, ever went off like an alarm bell like that did.
Hogarth was the archetypal Londoner, so our first walk is through the streets of his hometown towards the setting of Gin Lane. Starting in Covent Garden Piazza, the setting of his painting Morning, we're heading to the streets around St Giles in the Fields, once the depths of Georgian squalor and the real-life inspiration for Gin Lane. From there, we'll pass St George's Church, that features in the print, heading east to the City of London distillery to taste what all the fuss was about.
This is it, isn't it? Covent Garden is such a swish area and always seems to have been.
But this is his manor, this is his stomping ground.
But Hogarth regularly crossed over to the wrong side of the tracks for inspiration. We're heading to St Giles in the Field to pick up celebrated local artist Jane Palm Gold, who's taking us on a tour.
How are you doing? How you doing?
Very good.
What a great place. What an absolutely stupendous place to have a flat. I had no idea actual people lived around here.
A lot of people live here.
No idea.
Jane is inspired by the great man, and like his Gin Lane, her works are composite images of her own experiences of living in St Giles.
Stop, we're television. We insist you stop. We are television people. We outrank you, oh my God.
In Hogarth's day, the area around St Giles in the Fields Church was London's most notorious slum, the Rookery. And it would have looked very similar to Hogarth's night.
The big trade in the Rookery, which was the massive chain of subletting from streets to houses, to floors of houses, to rooms, to corners of beds, and everyone made money. It was a massive industry.
What, a corner of a bed?
Yes.
Meaning?
Oh, a bit of a bed.
Yeah.
So you'd be, really?
Yeah. That is strange, and it is such a boring street there, with such an enormously rich revolting and teeming history.
Yeah.
This is pretty much the heart of the gin epidemic.
It's quite sweet smelling there. I mean,
it is.
It's actually quite sweet. And you know what, haven't we come a long way? Because I met 250, 300 years ago, and not many people stood here and went,
Fresh air.
Just south is the churchyard of St Giles in the Field. Here Jane has discovered some of the London Hogarth depicted in his tableau Gin Lane, and it's still standing.
I have no idea. I had no idea that little gate, that little alleyway there existed.
I
Never.
know, it's amazing, isn't it? You see the steps by the office?
Yeah.
So you're thinking that
way.
this is the actual...
Well, I'm thinking that Hogarth, the viewpoint for Gin Lane would be over by those steps.
I see. Wow.
Over 250 years after his death, if you look hard enough, it's still possible to see glimpses of London as Hogarth did.
Well, it's not supposed to be an authentic portrait, is it? It's just
exactly.
actually... Yeah.
And Hogarth moved things around anyway, you know, just because, you know, of meaning and increasing meaning.
This print is about a lot more than paupers on the lash. Hogarth is angry, and his sharp, satirical teeth are snapping at the establishment. You see at the very back on the top of the church spire is King George I, looking on as pandemonium unfolds below him and doing nothing to help his subjects.
It's absolutely the best I've ever known this, and I've lived with this for decades and decades and decades. Brilliant.
Gin Lane was a pretty powerful piece of art. Just months later, the government passed the Gin Act of 1751 to end this scourge on society. Today, gin's back in. So we're going to conclude our walk at a distillery that, when it opened in 2012, was the first to start up in the City of London in 200 years. But we've come to taste some gin that's very similar to the stuff they were knocking back in the 18th century.
Come on, let's take the paint off the walls. Here we go. Here's the Hogarth. Here's the Hogarth. Yeah. Your health, my friend. Here we go. Hang on.
Wow.
That's a little harsh for me, that.
Back in Hogarth's day, it was even rougher. The cheap stuff was often distilled with terps, which caused blindness. You see the man with the bandage? He's actually blind drunk. Worse still, it converted into formaldehyde, which embalmed the organs.
You know what? I'm going to go to more art galleries after this. I didn't know your business was so brilliant. You're in the right game.
Now I've converted Danny with the help of copious amounts of gin. Join me as I reveal new sides to Hogarth and his works with a lad's holiday 18th century style.
He does a poo here,
I know,
doesn't
it's
it?
terrible.
I'm exploring the savagely satirical prints and personality of William Hogarth, the capital's first artistic biographer, with fellow Londoner Danny Baker.
Gin Lane, I know so well. When I first saw that, I was at school, and it resonated with us.
It seems to me Hogarth could be a very angry man. The government, the church, the monarch. No one was safe from one of his visual eviscerations. But where did that rage come from? For my next walk, I'm in the City of London, at Smithfield's Meat Market, where Hogarth spent his childhood. From here, I'll make my way past the site of the notorious Fleet Debtors' Prison towards the London Metal Exchange. And from there, it's past the monument to the Great Fire of London, a recent event in Hogarth's day. And my route ends at Sir Christopher Wren's magnificent St Paul's Cathedral. When Hogarth was born in 1697, the City of London was emerging as the commercial and financial capital we know today. But his father Richard was reckless with the little money he had and was imprisoned for debt when Hogarth was just 7 years old. An experience that clearly left its mark. This is emblematical print on the South Sea Scheme from 1721. Full of rage. It was his response to rampant speculation in an investment company that caused one of the first ever economic crashes in history. And it was his first successful print. Nearly 300 years on, fortunes are still gambled in scenes of Hogarthian chaos at the London Metal Exchange.
This is copper, zinc, all kinds of metal being traded all around the world, and it's all happening in this tiny little ring. And it looks like chaos, But this is a well-organised system that has evolved over hundreds of years. I mean, the idea of the word being the bond, I mean, this is the absolute exemplification. This is all about deals being made in split seconds. Little whispers in ears. People shouting across the room. Wave upon wave of energy. He's turned into a silverback. Wow, that was quite something.
My walk continues past monument towards Sir Christopher Wren's Baroque masterpiece, St Paul's Cathedral, whose marble would have been gleaming new in Hogarth's day. And as we know only too well, despite Hogarth's stark warnings, history has repeated itself many times since the collapse of the South Sea scheme. And that's one of his great strengths as an artist. He still speaks to us today. On the steps of St Paul's, I'm meeting an ex-trader who knows that better than most. In 2012, Kweku Adebole was sent to prison for fraudulent deals that added up to $2.2 billion. And he sees a lot of parallels between Hogarth's print and his own experiences.
Well, what's interesting for me about the South Sea sort of crisis is that the government had initially begun the scheme in order to repay its debts. In order to encourage people to invest, they were being asked to invest in a whole host of things. Some really crazy ideas, such as the manufacturing of square cannonballs. Or there was one company specifically, and I have to read this because I need to get the words right, but a company for carrying out an undertaking of great advantage, but for nobody to know what it was. And £2,000 was invested in that.
For Hogarth, the South Sea Company was a get-rich-quick scheme that appealed to the greed of all classes, from prostitutes to preachers. But when the crash came, only some were losers.
Over here is the devil actually taking slices of flesh out of fortune.
Yes, and throwing her body parts to the baying mob, who obviously want someone to take responsibility for their loss.
And below, these preachers, these men of religion who are gambling away our future. This idea of the city gambling away the future of good people, honour being broken on the actual wheel of life, that honesty actually being flogged.
The real problem is that the power elites at that time understood what they were doing, but failed to help everybody else see, because if they did, then it wouldn't achieve the goals that they were trying to achieve. I've seen the peak and the absolute trough. The system strips away humanity, like what Hogarth tries to explain.
Hogarth's print. It's a reminder that we mustn't forget about the ethics that needs to underwrite any functional society.
Yeah.
On first viewing Hogarth's prints, you might think he was a sanctimonious old prig. But I'm going to follow in his very footsteps to show nothing could be further from the truth. At midnight on the 26th of May 1732, he stumbled out of a pub with his best buddies, chartered a boat, and headed for the North Kent coast to carry on drinking. So I thought I should follow him on this jaunt that sums up his character. This was a group of up-and-coming young men about town whose antics would make today's Club 18 to 30 holidaymakers blush. And we know exactly what they got up to because they kept a diary complete with illustrations. My walk catches up with Hogarth and Co. on their third day of solid boozing. Starting at Upnor Castle, my route follows the River Medway towards the village of Hoo, and the site of one of Hogarth's infamous examples of 18th century bants. And from here, I'll head out to the Isle of Grain, ending my walk at the Hogarth Inn.
5 friends, 5 days, the ultimate pub crawl, or the Peregrination. We're in Upler, actually looking at a view of the castle.
Here is Hogarth and his 18th century band of barflies in front of Upler Castle. His Peregrination was definitely a lad's holiday. It would be a crime to walk it alone. So I'm being joined by local Carol Donaldson.
What do you think it would have been like in Hogarth's day down here?
I think it would have been, like it's busy today with yachts, but I think in Hogarth's day, the river would have been a lot busier.
Carol's a big Hogarth fan, and a few years ago gathered together a group of ladies to recreate his Peregrination. So I'm in safe hands.
Clay pipe.
Oh, right, clay pipe. One of the things I like about this is some of the sorts of traditions of this bit of Kent, that it's famous for its hops and famous for its apples as well, you know, cider and beer. You know, it's obviously has this kind of boozy history that Hogarth probably would have loved.
I think Hogarth liked his drink, definitely. He had his own drinking spoon, I believe. And I think one of the things that comes out from the diary is the kind of odd drinks that they drank in those days. So they have this drink that they make up, which is half rough cider and half brandy with spices in it. And when I came and did the walk, I made up this drink, and we all tried. It was quite potent stuff, but it was good. It kept you walking, definitely.
4 miles along the River Medway is the village of Poole and its church, St Werburgh.
Hogarth's a bit naughty here. He untrusses himself, it says, against possibly this sort of church door here.
You're too polite to say untrust himself.
Well,
he actually does a poo here,
I know,
doesn't
it's
it?
terrible.
And the door's since been bricked up.
Probably because of that.
Yes,
maybe.
the outrage.
That was pretty naughty, wasn't it, really?
But Tot Hall, who's this seaman who's probably seen everything, kind of, you can imagine a sailor, but nevertheless, I think he's pretty outraged by that. So he sort of gathers some nettles, may actually have been from here, and actually kind of whips Hogarth on the backside.
I think you could kind of sort of picture them doing it, and it's very much in the spirit of that whole trip, I think, where they have these funny fights with horse dung, and they have lots of water fights and that, and it's just this real kind of lads on holiday feeling.
But I like that Hogarth roughness.
Would you like me to whip you a nettle? Is that what you're asking?
Maybe later.
Following his peregrination, it's obvious Hogarth liked a bit of a laugh. But walking through this beautiful landscape, I can imagine it also appealed to the artist in him. The end of my walk is somewhere I know Hogarth would have approved of.
End of a fantastic walk, the Hogarth Inn on the Isle of Grain, a pint and a roast.
Suitably refreshed, join me back in London to explore the masterpieces that made Hogarth's name.
That's not Disney Presents, that's it.
Yeah.
Danny Baker and I are on a romp around the capital through the life and works of the great British artist, William Hogarth. Like my walking companion, Hogarth is a real Londoner. But before I catch up with Danny, I want to walk the streets that inspired Hogarth's breakthrough work that captured the city, genital warts and all. My next walk starts in Covent Garden, through streets which in the 18th century were teeming with the prostitutes that inspired the Harlot's progress, the work that made his name. After which, we're going to head to Private Eye, the HQ of modern political satire. And then it's south, past the National Gallery, the Courtauld Institute and Dr. Johnson's house, ending my walk by meeting Danny at a museum that's home to a Hogarth masterpiece. By the time Hogarth was 35, he was becoming a victim of his own success. His prints were so popular, people were making pirate copies. And for someone like Hogarth, who had fought his way up the greasy pole and was trying to make a career out of art, this was no laughing matter.
After years of petitioning, in the 1730s, Hogarth is at last successful, and he gets a change in the law to protect artists and printmakers. And that means that this area, just to the east of Leicester Square, explodes into a whole nexus of new shops and galleries that display artists' work.
The fact that shops like these are still selling prints to this day is a testament to his legacy.
Really, just look at this. I mean, these are all of Hogarth's great print series. But for me, one of the most exciting is the first that he produces. This is so innovative in the period.
This is the infamous Harlot's Progress, a series of 6 paintings he turned into prints in 1732. It tells the story of Moll, a young woman who arrives in London to seek her fortune, but is tricked into a life of prostitution that ultimately leads to her death. This was a blockbuster that earned Hogarth around a cool £250,000 in today's money. It was so popular because its characters weren't works of fiction.
For anyone looking at this scene, they would have known all the figures involved. She's called Moll Hackabout, named after 2 notorious prostitutes, Moll Moffat and Kate Hackabout, who you can see in the background there, looking on at these young women who've arrived, with his hand deeply down his trousers. This is a man who was known as the Rape Master General.
And just as notorious was the other player in this story, Syphilis.
In the 3rd scene, already she's begun to have the pockmarks of syphilis on her face. Her maid has actually lost her nose to syphilis.
Where most people would have happily brushed this deadly disease under the carpet, Hogarth puts it at the heart of his artwork. And it's thought he knew a lot about it because he, himself, had contracted it. Syphilis respected no class boundaries, and this was Hogarth's clarion call for something to be done about a moral and medical disease that was blighting society.
In the background, there's a single woman looking in the mirror, and her reflection is looking back. It's Hogarth telling us that we aren't immune from judgment. It's a technique that Hogarth uses again and again, this idea of looking back at us. We are involved. This wasn't about other people. This wasn't about the beautiful. This wasn't about the perfect lives of the middle class. This was about the grit of the street. It didn't moralise to the point of it becoming alienating. This was about a kind of truth that everyone would have understood.
My route is taking me east through Soho towards the offices of Private Eye. Hogarth's works may have been very popular, but they didn't do him any favours with the establishment. So I am on my way to meet a man who knows all about satirising well-known figures and the trouble it can bring. He's reputedly the most sued man in Britain.
Oh, Ian.
Hi, Gus.
Lovely to see you.
Very
So
nice
this
to
is where
meet
it
you.
all happens, nerve centre.
Yeah. Ish. Yeah.
Ian Hislop has been editor at Private Eye for over 20 years, but he's been a Hogarth aficionado for much longer.
Hogarth, he can be ferocious. I mean, some of it is eviscerating, isn't it? It's
Yes, and you know, when he sees corruption, which there was quite a lot of in political life, he goes for it, and he's quite scatological. He's quite rude.
Yes.
You know, he likes jokes about golden showers of money, obviously falling on people. He likes people dumping on each other in metaphorical and real senses. You know, he likes all that stuff. But he also likes quite subtle wordplay, and he quite likes pointing the finger.
and it's the thing of speaking truth to power, isn't it? Having the guts to do that.
Yes.
And he does it in a period in which one might imagine there could be consequences.
Yeah, and there were consequences. But, I mean, Hogarth's trick was that he was sort of genial. He was very rude about people, and they were too busy laughing to realise that the people he was being rude about were them.
I mean, do you feel his presence in the work that you do?
Yes, and all cartoonists at a certain point start submitting jokes, and then I say, Hogarth did that 250 years ago. He was almost the first, and he turned it into an art. I mean, Hogarth is, I think, an absolute consummate artist.
And do you think he would have made a living today? I mean...
I'd certainly have employed him, though he would probably have employed me.
Leaving Soho behind me, I'm taking a Hogarthian scenic route to meet up with Danny. Walking the streets of London, it's still possible to get glimpses of the city Hogarth would have known. But if you really want to get a sense of London past, my destination is just the place. The end of my walk, the Sir John Soane Museum, where I'm meeting up with Danny to see Hogarth's masterful follow-up to the Harlot's Progress. It's an absolute gem of a place, and if you're ever in town, I urge you to visit.
And you're a big collector, but this man here, I mean, he really kind of takes collecting to its absolute...
It's extraordinary. I'm ashamed of myself. I lived in this city 60 years nearly, and I've never been here. I'm ashamed of myself.
And he collects Hogarth when he's gone a little bit out of fashion.
I know. I collected early Black Sabbath albums. Everyone laughed. Not laughing anymore.
Sir John Soane was such an avid collector, he had to come up with ingenious storage solutions.
It's amazing.
No. Oh.
Isn't that...
That's the longest I've ever gone without saying a word. I wish the word awesome wasn't so milk dry these days, because I don't think I've ever been lost for words. Oh, man.
Hot on the heels of his success with the Harlot's Progress, Hogarth made this series of paintings featuring the life of a well-to-do womanising man-about-town character, known in the 18th century as a rake. And it's amazing to see all 8 canvases together in one place.
It's humbling almost to see these after years of kind of, flicking through plates in books. I'm loving this. I've always liked that fellow. It looks like various members of my family, that fellow. It does.
This is the story of Tom Rakewell.
He's inherited his father's wealth. He's going to have a good time.
So he ditches his pregnant girlfriend Sarah, and he sets off on a path full of sex and booze that finally leads to his downfall.
Now we're getting there.
He's in a brothel.
As a technical piece of work, how is that?
Oh, my word. I mean, it's just, you can see the way in which the narrative kind of flows across the canvas back and forth. It's brilliant as commentary, it's brilliant as narrative painting, but it's also aesthetically, it is deeply exceptional. This is one of the things that I think turns him from just being another artist into being a truly exceptional one.
Hogarth's talent as an artist is that he still brings humour to such rich pieces.
In the next scene, he's marrying an older, one-eyed... I mean, she's not... She's obviously got a few bob in the bag, so, you know. But then, of course, Tom gambles away all the money that he's got from his new wife.
When you know it's Hogarth and there is no redemption coming, you can't wait to get on to see what, see what happens next.
Debtor's prison.
Awful. People would have thought, well, there's the India story, but Hogarth thinks, it gets worse. It gets worse than that. It goes here.
madness.
The madness.
He's babbling, he's in Bedlam.
Yeah.
But the redemption is here. Look who's here
Yeah,
still.
but...
Look who's here still.
His spurned first love, Sarah.
He's trying to say that, you know, there are people who are loyal to you.
Exactly.
Who really
we're
love
not universally rotten as a species.
Exactly.
Look, you know.
But they're worth coming to actually see.
Stan,
in
wow,
person.
worth coming, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's, yeah. You know, no, you can have a bootleg of your favourite band, but you go and see them live, then
Yeah.
you've seen them.
Yeah.
Danny Baker and I are exploring the artist William Hogarth and his 18th century London. A place, a man, an art filled with humour and horror. Hogarth's talents turned the seedy underbelly of this city into art so successful that by the time he was in his late 30s, he was a household name. To this day, it's these works that define him. But like his prince, Hogarth had hidden depths. And I think my favourite Hogarth portrait hangs here at the Foundling Museum, and it gives you a glimpse of the real man.
I do love this space. It has within its collection some of the finest art of the 18th century and one of the great portraits in my mind, a portrait of its founder, Thomas Coram.
Hogarth said this portrait gave him the most pleasure to paint, and he did it for free. It shows a side to this great artist that seems to have got lost in the raucousness of his prints.
And the thing that strikes you when you see it is just the sheer scale of it. I mean, this is portrait painting on a scale that was usually reserved for kings, for popes. But it's actually a humble ship's captain. And what makes him so special is that he looked after some of the most disadvantaged people in London, the children who were abandoned. Thomas Coram attracted artists, he attracted writers, he attracted musicians to all work together to raise profile and to raise money for his new hospital. And I get the sense that in Thomas Coram, Hogarth saw something of himself, someone who would fight the establishment, do anything he could to protect the people who really needed it. What a picture.
For such a talented artist, it's amazing that there are hardly any monuments professing his greatness as a chronicler of Georgian Britain. For my final walk, we've come to Chiswick, West London, to see one of the few places where he's honoured, the Hogarth Roundabout. And after that, we'll make our way to Hogarth's house, a symbol of his success and where he spent his final years. A scenic detour past the gardens of Chiswick House brings us to the end of my walk, Hogarth's graveside. Hogarth would have been horrified to know that we remember him primarily as a satirist, but I do think he would have chuckled to know that one of the only places in London that bears his name is the Hogarth Roundabout on the A4. Just beyond the traffic is Hogarth's house. At 52, he bought what he described as a little country box by the Thames, where he lived with his wife Jane and the pug Trump.
Hogarth's house, mind your head.
Wow, man. Why would he have bought a house so close to the flyover? That's what I don't understand. You'd have thought he'd have looked, well, we could live here, but all this traffic. I guess this was in the country then.
Yeah, this is absolutely in the country.
Was he a happy man, do you think?
I think he obviously loved family life, or at least his wife. He doesn't have children. One of the wonderful things that he does is that he takes in orphans. I think he comes from a family that weren't wealthy, and so he appreciates what it's actually like to have nothing.
And for me, Hogarth's tender paintings of ordinary people like his servants or the shrimp girl tell you something about him that's rarely ever mentioned. deep down, he's a big softie.
I think the art world, I think the establishment disappoint him again and again and again. The establishment does not do the things that he feels it should. It doesn't support people in the way that it should.
I actually just thought he was a working cartoonist. Now you're explaining about the family and looking at this place. There's a lot of heart.
We've reached the end of our walk, and along the way I've noticed more than a few similarities between Danny and his favourite artist. Obviously, they're both hilarious, incredibly popular, successful and unapologetic. But most of all, they're big-hearted.
This is a question asked from love, that I'm your biggest fan.
Well, go on. Somehow I suspect you're putting the lead into the boxing glove here, but go on.
I would ask this of Hogarth as well, is there a point when you become something of the thing that you kind of are railing against? I look at your profile and you are so successful.
Am I part of the establishment? Do I ever feel part of that? No, I don't. I'm one slim 2-hour radio show away from not being in radio at all. And I know if I got run over by a truck tomorrow, there'd be all these eulogies. Oh, he was brilliant on the radio. Oh, he was so good. Oh, he was brilliant. Yeah, nobody gives me any work. So there may be that, me and Hogarth both. And so I'm on the margins of it.
This is the thing that Hogarth would have said. He would have been in this room probably, being grumpy, saying, "Oh my God, I'm right there on the margins."
I can imagine the worst thing that would have happened to him was if the establishment had said, "You know what? Yeah, come in. We'll fund you. You do what you want. We're going to be here. We're going to have exhibitions for you. You're great." He would have recoiled from that. Oh, hang on, that's not what's supposed to happen. That's no fun. And yet, I often think, had he walked along Gin Lane, they'd have thrown a bottle and knocked his hat off. What do you want round here? They would have done. Oh, I've come to help you. Off.
There's one more place I have to visit, so I'm saying goodbye to Danny, and I'm ending my final walk at Hogarth's graveside. And he certainly isn't buried with his artistic contemporaries in Westminster Abbey. Even in death, Hogarth, the man who produced some of the most recognisable British art in history, remains himself unrecognised.
I've got to be honest, it's pretty disappointing. I don't think this is the grave that Hogarth would have wanted for himself. But there is something I really do think they've got right. They've included on the fascia a little face mask, and that mask is the symbol that he used in so many of his series paintings as a symbol of the moment when the truth was revealed. And that is the thing that Hogarth was so good at, making us actually think about what was important. He was never afraid to take on authority. Across his career, even when it suited him, he wouldn't bow. He wouldn't break under the pressure of the establishment. He was always prepared to do what was right for his art rather than what was right for his pocket. I think for that reason, we have to be proud of him, but I do think, in terms of art history, we have to acknowledge him as one of the finest artists that Britain has ever produced. He actually does a poo here.